Why did you want to make this movie?
We love Miles Morales. We thought that was an amazing way to tell the Spider-Man story. We fell in love with the book, and when Sony came to us and said, you know, we want to do an animated Spider-Man movie, we said, we'll do it, but it has to be Miles. Yep. And we started, yeah, give it up for Miles Morales. It's amazing. Woo! And then we got sort of carried away, and it kind of grew from there. The whole idea is, how do we tell this story in a refreshing way? How do we tell it through somebody else's experience? How do we put a new spin on it? And Miles is a great start.
This is the best opportunity ever to tell a story that actually looked like a comic book, like you were literally walking into a comic book. So from the very beginning, we said, what can we do? How can we make a movie that looks like nothing you've ever seen before, that's like a completely unique cinematic experience that feels like you're walking into the pages of a three-dimensional comic book. And to everybody here's credit, these three geniuses over here, they were able to make it look like something you've never seen before and something that has to be seen on a big screen. We've been fans of Shameik for a long time. We loved him ever since we saw him for the first time in Dope. And we've known him for a while from different auditions and things that we've always felt like this guy is brilliant. He's so sincere, he's funny, he's cool, he's everything that Miles is. He's got a really unique, positive take on life. This is his first Comic-Con. It's his first time he's been here.
Yeah.
And from the beginning, we were like, this guy is the guy, and we were right.
I was thankful for the opportunity. The fact that it looks this beautiful and the fact that the writing is so amazing and that the cast is so amazing was a pleasant surprise. But the fact that I was able to have the opportunity to audition, to book and become Miles Morales was the original, oh my gosh, this would be amazing.
Well, Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Peter Parker?
Well, it's Peter Parker at 40. And it's Peter Parker with a bad back, and it's Peter Parker who's not sure if he still wants to be Spider-Man. And what it means to be, what it means to be Spider-Man after the excitement of being Spider-Man. He meets Miles in this movie, and Miles needs him to be a mentor and needs things from him, but he doesn't see himself as a mentor or a teacher, and he doesn't want to be. But he sees something really special in this guy, and it reminds him of what he loves about having those powers.
Miles just needs a teacher. He doesn't really want to be Spider-Man. He doesn't want this extra responsibility. He's just trying to go to school like a normal kid, middle school. All of a sudden, he bit by this spider, and he got these powers, and now people trying to kill him. And he has this duty of saving multiple universes. And now I meet this Spider-Man, and I'm like, hey, dude, you need to teach me. No.
I don't need to teach you.
Why not?
Go away, kid.
Dude, I really need you to help me save the world.
Not now. And I think Peter is...
And scene.
Just not now.
Really?
Not now, on your own time.
No, Miles. And I think Peter's in a situation where he sees this kid asking something from him, and he doesn't want to give it to him. But he's so persistent. And anytime someone's really persistent, after a while, if you're any sort of a human, you break down and give in.
Haley, let's go to talking about Gwen Stacy, a.k.a. Spider-Gwen. What excited you most to play her?
The fact that she is really just the toughest and the coolest and the smartest and the most capable one in the room, and she knows it.
All of these characters are born out of tragedy on some level. And the thing that's interesting about intersecting their stories is, for the first time, there's somebody out there that knows what they're going through. And the thing that's so interesting to me about the relationship between, Spider-Gwen and Miles and in our movie, all of these guys, is that they finally have like a tribe that they can hang out with. And here's somebody who doesn't have a buddy and is almost afraid to have a friend because he lost that friend. You know what I mean? And so the fact that they kind of get to find each other is a really beautiful part of the movie to me.
Well, as far as style, a lot of it, starts with Phil and Chris, and this whole approach to the movie, which is that we're trying to push every aspect of this in a way that you haven't seen before, and we're being challenged every day to think of ways to tell this story in a way that you haven't seen before. And then as far as, the characters, it really starts with the book, the book, the heart of the book is Miles and his family and their relationship, and that's the heart of the movie.
It's a really ambitious movie. It's probably the most ambitious thing about it is that it introduces a whole new version of Spider-Man. I mean, comics fans, most of you guys, you've known Miles for a while, but the world at large doesn't really know him and doesn't really have experience of a different character kind of bearing this mantle. And the fascinating thing about it to me is that, the same things that applied to Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. Those same ideas transfer onto another character who couldn't be more different than Peter in so many ways, and yet the strength of the original idea of the character still holds firm. It's still Spider-Man.
What we're really trying to achieve, too, was just an interpretation of a comic book that actually made it on screen and felt cinematic, but still was beholden to the original source material, which was a comic.
Where did you get the inspiration for this new approach?
I literally torn from the pages of the comics. I mean,
That's awesome.
100%. And then it was just a matter of looking at, the process that we go through to make these movies and see how visually you could translate that flat medium into a three-dimensional space and project it and still feel, the scope of a large film, but also the intimacy of the page and the panel on the page. One of the greatest strengths of comics is that it manages to encapsulate in one image a really succinct, powerful story point or motion or action. And in our process of animation, we really tried to achieve that same feeling.
Miles' story takes place in an alternate dimension to our own. The Spider-Verse is basically, all of these alternate ways of telling this story and all of these different people that experience it. And the thought of this movie was, what if those different stories intersected? And what would it do? How would it shake them up? What would happen if these people met? And I think that's like the power of this character, is that we've told his story so many different ways. And like Shamik says, anyone could be behind that mask. We can all imagine ourselves behind that mask. I think that's the cool thing about Spider-Man. And it's the interesting thing about comics culture and the fact that there's so many of these movies, that the story keeps getting told. And each time, the differences and variations in the ways that it gets told, those are really interesting to us.
Well, it looks absolutely amazing. Thank you guys so much for sharing that with us here at Comic-Con. Big round of applause for our panelists, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
So looking forward to this.
Completely different person with a completely different life experience. He has a family that is with his father and his mother and his uncle. He's supported, which is unusual for a superhero. But
for Spider-Man.
Especially for Spider-Man. And in the end, he's going through the same experience Peter Parker went through 50 years ago or 10 years ago, depending on what universe you're in. And that afforded us, as you just saw, a lot of freedom with how we share that with you.
You can look at it as the story of a young person who feels they're different, feels they're alone, is having challenges, and something happens to them that awakens them to having to discover who they actually are. And in doing that, he enters a wider world and sees that there are many other people who have something very much in common with him. So he finds a sort of brotherhood.
We all had the same question when we started, which was, why should there be another Spider-Man movie? And what we quickly determined was that for all of us, if we were to make another Spider-Man movie, it has to look and feel unlike anything anyone has seen. And that's at least what we were trying to do. And what we learned quickly was that that's really hard to do. Yeah, so the first year and a half of development of the movie was just trying to figure out, first of all, what it might look like, and then trying to figure out how we would do that, because there were no...
Comment on allait le faire?
Yeah, there were no computer programs or algorithms. There was no way to actually make what we thought we might want to make. For the first year and a half of the movie was spent making basically 2 seconds of footage.
Well, the Spider-Verse, as most of you probably know, refers to the idea that there are multiple parallel universes where things are slightly different in each universe, and obviously in each one of these universes there is a slightly different version of Spider-Man.
We ended up narratively using the multiverse, the Spider-Verse, as a way to bring other characters into Miles' world, as you just saw, and really help him with his origin story, with overcoming sort of the fear and the anxieties of trying to pick up where Peter Parker left off.
So first of all, Sarah and Ryan, were consulting on this movie, and they actually drew original artwork that's in the movie.
They created Miles Morales in 2011, after Barack Obama had been elected president of the United States. And I think, what they were doing is just making a point that that we've lived with this mythology of Spider-Man for so long, and Peter Parker as the one and only Spider-Man, that there could be a multiracial, a diverse version of Spider-Man. Yeah, and when you walk around when you walk around Paris or New York or any city in this world, diversity is everywhere. It's even here, So it's I think what we were doing was just representing what's out there today.
We have a version of the Kingpin story in this movie that's central to what goes on, and I think the Kingpin in a way represents almost the opposite of what a character like Miles or Peter represents.
Because he doesn't have a family.
Well, or the idea that with Spider-Man with great power, you need great responsibility. The Kingpin's almost the opposite of that. First and foremost, the thing we were looking for was exactly the thing that Shameik has in abundance in his performance, and that's a sort of openness and innocence that lets you connect with what this kid is feeling. And it's also, he had a unique quality. Just the cadence of his performance was like, I haven't really heard too many animated performances with that sort of idiosyncratic pacing or once more, that vulnerability.
So, as we looked at Miles comics, and we came across the Spider-Verse comics, that just seemed like an exciting new, area for us to get into. We were really, from the very beginning, looking for ways to make this movie distinctive. We wanted it to look distinctive. We wanted the story to be distinctive. We wanted the character to be distinctive. We knew that if we were going to make another movie like this, it had to stand on its own and be really different.
When we started making this movie, even before we knew it was going to be animated, I think the question up front was like, why make another Spider-Man movie? There's this really healthy version of Spider-Man out there that people obviously love. And so that was sort of our challenge at every step, was if we're going to make this movie, we're going to make it stand apart from everything you've seen before, which is why we ended up, being an origin story for Miles. And then if we're going to make it animated, we really wanted to make an homage to what the source material, which is comic books, and we all love comic books, and we're all really sort of well versed in animation as well, and it felt like it was time to try to figure out a way to take the look of a comic book and the really dynamic sort of staging in comic books and the really impactful dynamism in the posing, and try to translate that into a big epic scope cinematic version of a comic book.
I would say that I can relate to Miles in my real life. Let me tell you how. How I got chosen to play Miles, for instance. Miles was chosen out of however many people live in Brooklyn by a spider while he's spray painting. You guys just saw, he's chilling with his uncle, he's being creative, spray painting, and boom, the spider chose Miles. He could have bit his uncle, You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it bit Miles. And
It may have in an alternate universe.
in an alternate universe, it may have. In this universe,
We bid him.
exactly.
What a lot of people don't understand is that making an animated film involves a lot of phases of production all at the same time. So we ended up sort of dividing and conquering, and our skills overlap in a lot of areas, but you know, there were a lot of times when Rodney was maybe rewriting pages and recording actors. Maybe I would be working with the layout and camera team and the story artist to, you know, kind of conceive and start blocking out new sequences. Bob might be working with the animation team, animating sequences that had gone into production earlier. And then, you know, the next day, Bob might be recording actors, or I might, or Rodney might be with the art department. So things kind of constantly bounce back and forth. And because of the scale and the complexity of this movie, it was really a necessity.
To walk into a room, just as a fan of movies, to walk into a room and suddenly Nick Cage is standing there, and then you're working with him, and he's like really caging it up, you know, like, you know, with his performance, it's like he's bringing, he's bringing full Nick Cage, and it's like a dream come true. I mean, we have, you know, Academy Award winners in this movie.
Mahershala Ali.
Yeah. So, you know, first of all, it's exciting, and second of all, you know, there was strategy to it. We were bringing in really, really good actors because we wanted the movie to have a beating heart. You know, there's a family at the center of this story, and there's, you know, characters that we're trying to make you feel like they're real, you know? So to bring in like really, really good actors just makes everybody, they give you these great performances, and then everyone has to raise their game to live up to what they've already provided us with.
Talk to me a little bit about the relationship. We saw a bit of it on screen today, but the relationship between your two characters.
Yeah, they become kind of partners in crime.
You know?
You know? They become friends, unlikely friends, and it's a little bit Karate Kid, if you will, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san.
The great thing for us as filmmakers is that the stars all kind of lined up, and we ended up in a situation where we had producers, creators, Phil and Chris, who had a real vision, and the studio that said, yeah, okay, you can do that. And even though they didn't know what we were going to do, and at every step along the way, everybody on the team just pushed as far as they could into this idea of using animation to be more expressive, to be like a comic book, honor the original source, and to try to bring, you know, New York 2018, or 2019, hopefully, to life in a way that everybody in the audience could understand, so everybody could really go through this experience in Miles' shoes. I always say, I wish everybody who goes to see these movies could see how much work, how much attention to detail, how much care and real love goes into making these, because, you know, the minute we all like knew it was the Miles Morales story, I think all of us felt, you know, we have to introduce a new Spider-Man who speaks to a whole lot of people in a brand new way, and we were all so determined to like make a character that you would love and empathize with and really want to go on this journey with and see him succeed.
This dynamic that he doesn't come from a broken home. He comes from a real stable, professional parenting environment, and parents who want the best for him, who want him to achieve his highest potential, you know, so sending him away to a school that they think is better for him, but is still diverse. He's not completely away from his world. All of that I thought was so important. And the bilingual aspect of it. I mean, I'm New Yorican, so I'm just saying, I never saw that in any animations.
When Sony came to us and said, wouldn't it be cool to do a Spider-Man as an animated movie? And the first thing we thought was, yeah, that would be awesome to finally see a movie that feels like a comic book come to life, but wouldn't it be like the 7th Spider-Man movie? Like, it would have to feel like something super fresh, and so we said that we wouldn't want to do it unless it was Miles Morales' story, because that felt like something we haven't seen before. I think the reason why Spider-Man resonates for so many people is because anybody can really imagine themselves behind the mask. You put on the mask and you don't know what you look like. And in this movie, you know, as it goes on, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, if you're a friggin' pig, you can relate to, I can see yourself up on screen, you know? So that felt like a really empowering idea and something we really wanted to latch onto.
What were you looking for in your Miles Morales?
Well, we first saw him in Dope, like so many other human beings, and followed his career, thought he was awesome. He came in to audition for us for another movie, and we loved him, and we just thought he was the coolest and sweetest and most heartfelt guy, and he has like a really distinctive and fun voice, specifically. And so when the idea of this came up, he was literally the first person that we thought of, and was our number one choice from the beginning. Very few animated movies have like a soundtrack like this, and so it feels really, really new and fresh in a good way.